Okay, so we're going to talk about naming salts. So a salt is made up of a metal and a non-metal that are joined by an ionic bond. So this means that the metal will have a positive charge and the non-metal will have a negative charge. Okay, so in the scenario where you have a positively charged ion and a negatively charged ion, the overall charge has to be equal to 0. So there needs to be no net overall charge. So let's just look at a simplistic concept. So let's say, for example, I had a positive ion and one negative ion. That is going to work out okay. That's going to have an overall net charge of neutral, 0. Then let's say, for example, I had a situation where I had a non-metal that had a charge of 2 minus. Then in order to make this work with a metal that has a charge of 1 plus, I would need to have 2 of them. Then let's look at a situation where I have a non-metal which has a charge of 3 minus, joining to a metal that has a charge of 1 plus. I would need to have 3 of them. So let's actually look at how that plays out in a real life scenario. So a metal that has a charge of just a plus would be, say, for example, lithium, Li. And we could have a look at lithium here. So let's imagine this is lithium with its 1 charge, and it's going to be bound to chlorine, which has 1 negative. So if I was writing lithium chloride, I could simply just write LiCl, as this positive charge and this negative charge is going to result in a neutral charge. Then if I looked at this situation here, well, if I have an ion which has a 2 negative charge, say for example SO4 2 minus, don't get too confused by the complicated SO4 bit. What we're really interested in is the fact that this is a 2 minus charge. In order to make this work, I'm going to need to have 2 lithium ions. So therefore my formula for this is going to be Li2SO4. So this is going to balance out, and that is going to have a neutral charge. Then finally, if I was to have a non-metal ion which was PO4 3 minus, so as a phosphate ion, then what I'm looking at doing is having 1, 2, and 3 lithiums. So see if you can write down, pause the video on a scrap of paper, what your formula would be for this. Okay, so hopefully we're writing Li3PO4. And this is going to make sense. Okay, so let's now have a look at some other examples. So let's say, for example, I was going the other way now. Let's imagine that I was dealing with a negative ion, and this negative ion, let's say, for example, was chlorine, or it could be bromine. And I'm going to deal with a positive ion. I'm only going to need to have 1 bromine. Now let's say, for example, I have a ion which has got a 2 positive charge. I'm going to need to have 2 bromine ions. And finally, if I had an ion which had a 3 positive charge, I'm going to need 3 bromine ions. So let's imagine this situation here. I could have K, which has got just 1 plus. So that compound would be KBr. This here I could have as, let's say, calcium, which has got 2 plus, and that would therefore mean that I'm going to have two bromine ions. So I would write CaBr2. And then finally, if I had aluminium, which is 3 plus, see if you can write down the formula for what aluminium bromine would be. Okay, so hopefully you've gone Al with 1, 2, 3 bromine atoms or ions, and that's how I would label bromine. Okay, so this can get a little bit trickier, but before we do that, let's just have a look at our various ions and the charges. So the charges of our 1 plus, or our plus 1, is potassium, sodium, lithium. The charges of our plus 2 are magnesium, calcium, copper, and iron. Our charges of our plus 3 are aluminium, and there can also be iron in there as well in a slightly different form. Our charges of minus 1 is going to be Cl, Br, iodine, and nitrate. And our charges of 2 minus is going to be SO4, and our charges of 3 minus is going to be PO4. Okay, so imagine I was asked a question where I wanted to know what the ion, what the salt is going to be of potassium phosphate. So what I've got to do there is I've got to go, well, potassium has got 3 negatives, so 1, 2, 3, and phosphate has got 3 negatives, 1, 2, 3. Potassium K has got 1 positive, so 1. So therefore, I'm going to need to have 3 of these potassiums, K, K, and K, in order to join up to form an ionic compound with phosphate, PO4. So that is going to be K3PO4. Okay, so now let's say I wanted to know what a compound is going to be if I was going with, let's go with calcium, Ca, and iodine. So if you pause the video and have a go at this one. Okay, so hopefully you've given that a go. So calcium is 2 plus, and iodine is just 1 negative. So I'm going to therefore need 2 iodine in order to make this work. So CaI2. Okay, so then let's do one more. Let's imagine I had a situation where I had FAL and NO3. So you pause the video and try and do aluminium nitrate. So aluminium is 1, 2, 3, and my nitrate is just -1. So therefore I'm going to need 3 nitrate ions, 1 and another, in order to make this work. So this is a bit trickier because I'm going to write AlNO3 with a bracket around this to write another 3 next to it. Okay, I said that was the last one, but let's try another one. So let's go with, if I had, say for example, let's go with Br and Cu, copper bromine. So try and have a go at that. Okay, so copper has 1, 2, and bromine is 1 negative. So in order to make this work, I'm going to need to have 2 bromine, so that is going to be copper bromide, like so. Okay, so there is one scenario where this could get a little bit trickier. So let's say, for example, I had phosphate and magnesium. Okay, so the problem with this is that my magnesium is 2 plus and my phosphate is 3 minus. So if I just try to add another magnesium, then I'm going to have too many. So what I need to do is I need to try and work out how to make this work. So if I added another potassium, then I'm going to end up with having 6. And then if I add another magnesium on top of that, then I'm also going to have 6. So what I would write here is magnesium 1, 2, 3, and potassium 1, 2. So PO4, and remember, because we've got a small number here, we're going to have to put a bracket with a 2 next to it, like so. Okay, so let's have a look at another one. Let's say, for example, in the other direction now, I had SO4 at Al, so aluminium sulfate. So you pause the video and have a go at doing this. Okay, so Al is 3 plus 1, 2, 3, and sulfate is 2 negative. So if I add another sulfate, I'm going to have too many. So if I add another aluminium to bring this up to 6, then I can add another sulfate again, and so therefore I'm going to end up with Al2SO4 with a bracket and a 3 there to show you that that is aluminium sulfate. Okay. So let's just do a couple more. Let's say I have copper phosphate. See if you can try that one. So copper, Cu, 1, 2, phosphate, PO4, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to need to have another one of these phosphates to bring it to 6. And then I can have another 2 of the copper to bring it to 3. So that's going to be Cu3 phosphate brackets 2. Okay, let's go with one that's really kind of simple. Let's imagine I had a situation where I had potassium chloride. So we pause the video and try this one. Okay, so potassium is plus 1, chlorine minus, so that's just going to stay as is, no need to change. And let's say, for example, another one, if I had magnesium sulfate. Pause the video and try that one. So magnesium, I have 2, sulfate, I also have 2 negatives, so that is going to be fine without any need to change anything. Okay, and then let's do another one. Let's say, for example, I have phosphate and copper phosphate. So I'm going to do copper, 2 positive, phosphate, 3 negatives. So I'm going to need to do my usual trick, increase this to 6, add another 2 coppers. So this is going to be copper 3, phosphate 2, brackets, like so. Okay, and last one, let's go with sodium sulfate. Pause the video, have a go at this one. Sodium plus sulfate 2 minus. So therefore I'm going to need to have another sodium here. So that's going to be sodium 2 sulfate, like so.